Well, Uncle James boomed, voice cutting through the laughter around the picnic tables. Look who finally decided to show up. I set the cooler down, trying to keep my face neutral. Hey, Uncle James, I said, forcing a smile. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Hey. Really, Miguel? Last I heard you were still working that clinic downtown, pulling in what, 40,000 a year. Living paycheck to paycheck, he said, gesturing at the assembled relatives who had formed a loose circle around us, eager for the familiar spectacle. Something like that, I muttered. Uncle James leaned in, savoring the moment. You're 32, Miguel. Most men your age have homes, families, careers that actually mean something. Look at Ethan, he owns his law firm, a house in Westfield, 2 kids in private school. Hannah just made partner at her accounting firm. Even little Grace runs her own marketing agency now. Grace, my 28-year-old cousin, beamed as if she'd just been knighted. And you, Uncle James continued, pointing at me like a judge delivering a verdict, still working at a clinic, living in that tiny apartment. Are you even trying? I gritted my teeth, remembering the long road I'd traveled since my father passed 5 years ago. Uncle James had appointed himself the family's moral compass, showing off his construction business, his truck worth more than some people's annual salaries, and his unwavering sense of superiority. I unclipped the lid of the cooler. Turkey and cheese sandwiches. Nothing fancy, I said, trying to reclaim some dignity. But everyone's attention stayed fixed on Uncle James, the self-proclaimed patriarch, the highlight of this annual reunion. I reminded myself quietly, they were looking for a spectacle. And I was the star. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every week. You're still living like a college student, Uncle James said, voice loud enough for the whole circle to hear. Tiny apartment, beat-up car, working for someone else instead of building your own future. Miguel, where did we go wrong with you? The words hung in the summer air, heavy and insistent, like smoke from a neighbor's grill. This was the annual spectacle, the moment when Uncle James invited the entire family to dissect my life and offer unsolicited guidance. Previous years had featured the same critiques: poor financial planning, lack of ambition, failure to find a suitable partner, and my general inability to measure up to the benchmarks of success the Jeffersons held sacred. What no one ever asked, and certainly no one knew, was what I actually did at the clinic downtown, or why I chose that path despite more obvious financial opportunities. I'm happy with my choices, I said calmly. Happy? Uncle James laughed, the sound sharp. That's exactly the problem. Comfortable is the enemy of progress. You can't build wealth sitting on your comfort. You can't leave a legacy by settling for mediocrity. Ethan, my lawyer cousin, chimed in, trying to sound reasonable. He's got a point, Miguel. I mean, no judgment, but don't you want more? A better car, a bigger apartment, more stability. Hannah added in a tone reserved for a sensitive diagnosis, not everyone is built for corporate success. Some people just operate differently. It's not about being built for success, Uncle James corrected. It's about choices. Miguel spent the last decade making the wrong ones, and now he's stuck in a dead-end loop. I listened, nodding politely, while a sleek black sedan eased into the parking lot beside my aging Honda. Subtle but unmistakably expensive. My pulse quickened when I recognized the driver, Dr. Victoria Hensley, Chief of Surgery at Central General Hospital and Director of the Trauma Residency Program. She wasn't just my boss, she'd been my mentor for the past 3 years, guiding me toward board certification in emergency surgery. What she was doing at a Jefferson family reunion was a mystery, but my stomach tightened in anticipation. Uncle James, oblivious to everything beyond his tirade, continued, Miguel here is 32, with nothing tangible to show. Renting a tiny apartment, driving a car that should have been replaced 5 years ago, working hourly wages instead of building equity. Ethan shook his head sympathetically. Ouch. Have you thought about going back to school? Maybe a certification or some kind of specialized training that opens doors. Or start your own practice, Hannah suggested. Even part-time at first. You need to plan for retirement. Social Security alone won't cut it. At that moment, Dr. Hensley stepped out of her car, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. Petite, poised, with an aura that made even hospital administrators nervous, she strode toward the gathering, eyes sweeping the familiar chaos. The family's judgmental chatter continued around her, unaware of the force about to shift the dynamic. Dr. Hensley had stepped to the edge of the family circle, listening to the tirade with a growing, barely concealed amusement. Our eyes met, and I gave a small nod. She returned it with a subtle smile that hinted she was thoroughly entertained. What Miguel needs, Uncle James declared, voice booming like he'd just uncovered the solution to every life problem, is a wake-up call. Life isn't going to hand him success on a silver platter. He needs to start making serious adult decisions about his future. Before he could continue, Dr. Hensley spoke, her voice calm but cutting through the chatter with absolute authority. Uncle James turned toward her, flashing the confident grin he reserved for impressive, accomplished women. That's right, James Jefferson of Jefferson Construction, he said proudly. And you must be Dr. Victoria Hensley, she replied, extending her hand. I believe you work for Clearwater Medical Center. His chest puffed up. Yes, Senior Project Manager. 8 years now. Our company has built nearly half the commercial developments in this city. I know, Dr. Hensley said, her tone polite but firm. Your firm handled our surgical wing renovation last year. Excellent work. Uncle James practically glowed with pride. Thank you. We take pride in delivering quality. Are you in the market for more development work? Dr. Hensley's attention shifted to me. Actually, I came looking for Dr. Miguel Jefferson. I apologize for the interruption, but we have an emergency at the hospital, and we need him immediately. The silence that followed was profound. I could hear traffic on the highway half a mile away. Dr. Jefferson. Uncle James repeated slowly, the confidence draining from his face. Dr. Miguel Jefferson, she confirmed, still looking directly at me. Chief Resident in Trauma Surgery at Metropolitan General. We have a multi-car accident en route, and we need our top trauma surgeon ready. Uncle James's face went through several shades of shock before settling on a pale gray that matched the concrete picnic tables. Chief Resident, he muttered. Yes, Dr. Hensley said matter-of-factly. And once he passes his board exams next month, which he will, he'll join us as a full attending trauma surgeon. The family circle went completely silent. Ethan's jaw was slack. Hannah was staring as if I had sprouted wings. Grace looked like she was calculating an impossible math problem in her head. He's been my top resident for 3 years, Dr. Hensley continued, unfazed by the stunned expressions. Exceptional surgical skill, excellent patient outcomes, natural leadership. The hospital board approved his attending position last month. Attending position. Uncle James echoed, voice distant. Yes, she confirmed, starting salary is $385,000 annually, plus surgical bonuses, research stipends, and profit sharing. That should bring it close to $450,000 in his first year, assuming typical caseloads. The number landed on the family like a physical shockwave. Uncle James's construction business likely earned around $80,000 a year. Ethan's law practice might clear $150,000 in a strong year. I was looking at first-year earnings that would eclipse what most of them made in 5. Miguel, Dr. Hensley said, checking her watch. I know it's family time, but the victims are being airlifted to our trauma center. Can you meet me there in 30 minutes? Of course, I said, finally finding my voice. I'll follow you over. Excellent. And Miguel? She paused, eyes scanning the still stunned family. Bring your surgical bag. This will require our best work. She turned to leave, then paused to look back at Uncle James. Mr. Jefferson, I hope you understand how proud you should be of your nephew. Dr. Jefferson is one of the most promising trauma surgeons I've had the privilege to work with in 25 years, Dr. Hensley said as she returned to her car, leaving the family gathering in stunned silence. In just 5 minutes, everything had changed. Finally, Ethan broke the quiet. You're a trauma surgeon. Yes, I said simply. A trauma surgeon, he repeated, incredulous. You operate on people in emergencies. That's exactly what trauma surgeons do, I confirmed. Uncle James was still staring at me like I'd stepped out of a sci-fi movie. But, you said you worked at a clinic. I do, I said. The trauma clinic at Clearwater Medical Center. It's part of one of the busiest emergency departments in the state. And you make, what, 40,000 a year? Hannah added, her voice hesitant. No, I corrected gently. Uncle James had confidently declared that was my salary. I had never corrected him. For years, I let the family build their version of my life, letting them assume what they wanted. It was easier than defending every decision. Why? Grace asked quietly. Why didn't you tell us you were a doctor? I had been expecting that question. Because no one ever asked, I said. In all the years of reunions, birthdays, and holidays, not one of you asked what I did at the hospital. You assumed I was a technician, a clerk, or something similar, and built your ideas around that assumption. Their silence confirmed the truth of my statement. They had critiqued my life without knowing it. I tried to tell you once, I continued. 3 years ago, when I began my residency, I mentioned surgical training. Uncle James laughed and said watching operations on TV didn't count. Uncle James winced, clearly recalling the moment. You let us think you were failing, Ethan said, half accusing, half admiring. I let you think what you wanted, I replied. Your assumptions said more about your expectations than about my reality. But, the apartment, Hannah said, trying to process. Yes, I live in a small one-bedroom, 6 blocks from the hospital, I explained. It's tiny because I'm rarely home, and when I am, I'm usually sleeping. I don't need more space. With that salary, you could afford a house, Grace pointed out. I could, I said. But I'm saving for other priorities. What other priorities? She asked. I finally shared what I had avoided for years, not shame, but knowing my family's definition of success didn't match mine. Medical school left me with $200,000 in student loans. I live modestly to pay them off quickly. After that, I plan to open a free clinic in an underserved part of the city. A free clinic? Uncle James repeated, incredulous. Most trauma patients can't afford proper care, motorcycle accidents, workplace injuries, domestic violence. I want to provide emergency surgical care regardless of insurance status. But why? Ethan asked. It's noble, but you could make millions in private practice. Saving lives is more important than accumulating wealth, I said simply. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Jeffersons had always believed about success. Decades spent measuring worth by income, possessions, and social status suddenly felt irrelevant. The idea that someone could choose service over wealth didn't fit their understanding of rational decision-making. Miguel, Uncle James said slowly, I owe you an apology. A real apology. You owe me respect, I corrected gently. Apologies are nice, but what I want is for my family to stop assuming what my life looks like and start asking about what I'm actually doing. Dr. Jefferson, Ethan said, testing out the title. I still can't believe you're a surgeon. I mean, I can accept it now, but it's hard to reconcile with what we assumed you'd become. Yeah, I finished. I looked around at my family, people I loved despite their flaws, people who had underestimated me for years because I didn't fit their definition of success. This revelation wouldn't instantly fix our dynamics, but it was a start. "There's something else you should know," I said, pulling out my phone and checking a new text. The attending position Dr. Hensley had mentioned came with additional responsibilities. "What kind of responsibilities?" Hannah asked nervously, bracing for another surprise that would upend her assumptions. "I'll be directing the trauma surgery residency program," I said. "Teaching the next generation of emergency surgeons. It's a significant honor. Most doctors wait years for this kind of appointment." "Teaching other doctors?" Grace said, awe in her voice. "I already do," I said. "I've been supervising junior residents and medical students for the past 2 years. It's one of the most rewarding parts of my job." My phone buzzed again, another message from the hospital. The accident victims were arriving, and they needed me immediately. "I have to go," I said, standing and grabbing my keys. "Lives are depending on the surgical team being ready." "Of course," Uncle James said quickly. "Go save lives." "Talk later," I added, walking toward my Honda Civic, which suddenly felt like practical transportation rather than a symbol of failure. I could hear the family beginning to process what they'd learned. "A trauma surgeon," I heard Ethan say to Grace. "Our cousin Miguel is a trauma surgeon who's going to make $450,000 a year," Grace replied. "Plus bonuses. And he's been living in that tiny apartment by choice," Hannah added. "To pay off student loans faster." I started the engine, glancing back one last time. Uncle James sat heavily on a picnic bench, staring at the ground like he was solving a puzzle. The rest of the family clustered in small groups, comparing memories, wondering what other assumptions they had gotten wrong. As I drove toward the hospital, my phone rang through the Bluetooth system. Dr. Hensley's voice came through. "Miguel, hope I didn't stir up too much family drama back there." "Nothing that wasn't long overdue," I said. "But I'm curious, how did you know where to find me?" "Your cousin Grace," she said with a laugh. "She manages social media for that new restaurant downtown. She posted pictures from the reunion, and I spotted you in the background. Thought it was a good chance to connect family and the multi-car accident. Unfortunately, it's very real. 3 vehicles, 7 victims, 2 critical. We'll need your best work today." "On my way," I said, switching into the professional mindset that had carried me through years of training and residency. Family drama would wait. People needed surgery, and I was one of the few in the city qualified to provide it. 20 minutes later, I was scrubbed in, standing over a trauma patient, hands moving with the precision that years of training demanded. Each incision, each suture was life or death. This was why I had chosen this path: the sacrifices, the late nights, the student loans, everything I had given up in the name of a purpose my family had never understood. 6 hours later, after completing 3 emergency surgeries and stabilizing 4 additional patients, I finally had a moment to check my phone. 17 missed calls. 43 texts. Most were simple exclamations of awe. "I can't believe you're a surgeon." Others were attempts to reconcile the revelations of the day. "Mom wants to know if you need help moving into a bigger apartment." The message that mattered most, though, was from Uncle James. "Miguel, for years I lectured about building something meaningful with your life. Today, I see that you have been doing exactly that, and I was blind to it. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry it took me this long to realize it." I smiled, setting the phone aside. Tomorrow, I would call him back, and maybe we could rebuild our relationship on respect and understanding rather than assumptions. Tonight, though, I was heading to my modest apartment, satisfied. I had saved lives. I had made choices that mattered. Sometimes the most meaningful success isn't measured in wealth or status. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living a life that matters, even if no one else fully sees it.